I'm Jay Feza for the Rebel.media. I'm right now backstage with the one and only Ben Shapiro, conservative giant, intellectual giant. It's great to be with you.
As Trump supporters know.
It's great to be with you, and I'm really happy to be with you.
Great to see you too.
So I'm a pro-lifer, and I'm very outspoken on my university campuses. And one of the problems about being outspoken pro-lifer in the university campuses is that we often get silenced or censored or isolated by our university and by our student union. So do you have any message to say to anyone, I mean, not just pro-lifers, but even men's rights activists, anyone who is an advocate for something that is more of a controversial issue?
Okay, so first thing is don't be stupid, meaning that if you are interested in getting out of university with good grades, don't give your professors the baton with which to club you. If you're going to do stuff that's controversial, do it outside of your final, do it outside of your essays, use Blue Book. Do you have Blue Books up here? So I mean, writing with student ID numbers as opposed to with your name on the test so that they can't identify you. If you're doing it anonymously, I mean, that's what I did at UCLA, which is I spoke out all the time. I spoke out in class. I did protest, all of it, but when it came time to writing my essays for class, I wrote exactly what the professors wanted me to, and that's how you graduate summa cum laude while being a conservative at UCLA. So
well, isn't that kind of, I mean, you're saying that we should put our self-interest above our, let's say, political interest, so, or the moral interest.
Your self-interest is your political interest, and it doesn't make any sense to give the left the opportunity to stop your career when you're 19, as opposed to you speaking out when you can, making lots of money, becoming a donor to the school, and then getting the discriminatory professor fired. That seems to me a better strategy.
You saying play it safe then? Play it safe as a student?
I'm saying play it smart. I'm not necessarily play it safe. Meaning, like, again, take part in protests, argue with professors, but be smart about it. Like, why would you possibly run right into the teeth of the professor's power? The professor can give you a D, and then, okay, you protest it, you make a fuss, but then you still have the D on your transcript. So maybe you can make enough of a fuss to actually make a difference, but that's a calculation you have to make.
Okay. And that's actually a really well thought out answer, to be honest. But at first when I heard it, I was kind of disagreeing with you because I subscribe to like Kantianism and Aristotelian ethics and that kind of stuff.
And that's the easiest thing to do.
The deontological,
Exactly, and well, that's the easiest moral stand to take on this stuff, which is never lie, always say exactly what you think on the finals. But the truth is, the final is not a test of what you actually think, right? They very rarely say, "What do you think about this issue?" And even if they do, what they really mean is, "What do I think about this issue?" Right? So you just write what they think, and you get the A. Better to do that.
So what do you think are the huge differences between, let's say, American universities and Canadian universities on free speech? Do you think American universities are worse, or I personally, because I've lived in America and Canada, I personally think Canadian universities are worse, but that's just...
So, I mean, I have to acknowledge that my knowledge of Canadian universities is basically what I read in the press and having talked to people who've gone to Canadian universities because I'm from America. So it depends on the university, but you guys do have some problems that we don't have in the United States. You actually do have hate speech laws, which we don't have to run into in the United States. I know that you have some serious problems with anti-Semitism on a lot of campuses as well. It seems like the hate speech laws are applied in discriminatory fashion. So they're only applied when you offend somebody of the left, but if you offend somebody of the right, then that's totally fine. I mean, I know that going back a decade, this was a problem that you guys have been fighting for a long time. And again, anytime it implicates government action, like in the United States, the First Amendment protects a lot of this activity. So even when you have something like Berkeley, the president of the United States and all of the major Democrats are forced to come out and condemn what happens in Berkeley. But I assume that, if something like that happened at York, I assume that you guys would, have a little bit more issue because it depends on what the person said. Did the person say something that was so hateful that it could be prosecuted, that kind of thing?
So that's the major issue right now that Jordan Peterson is facing with gender pronouns. Have any thoughts about Bill C16 and Bill 89? If you don't know Bill 89, it's the Child Welfare Services could take your child.
We've written about that.
Oh, okay, ridiculous,
So
ridiculous, So you have any thoughts about that?
They're both evil. They're both evil laws. Yes, a law that it is. I mean, a bill that suggests that speech with which you disagree is somehow prosecutable is an evil law. It's violative of basic freedom issues. And it is a violation of thought freedom and speech freedom to suggest that I must call you whatever you wish to be called, whether or not that is congruent with reality. And as far as Bill 89, I mean, that's insane. I mean, the idea that you're going to have the government given the capacity to take a child out of the home because your 3-year-old thinks that she's a boy for a week and you don't decide to get transgender hormonal treatment is fully insane. I mean, that's just the triumph of leftist ideology over any semblance of freedom or parental responsibility.
Well, my thoughts are this is just government legislating just mental illness and insanity in some cases. I mean, some people apply to this because of cultural values and that kind of stuff, because it's the trendy thing to do. Other people have a mental illness, and that to me seems kind of ridiculous. Do you feel like American law is the left and the LGBT movements are starting to push it like they did in Canada, or do you feel like there's a good defense?
I mean, I first of all, my perspective on transgenderism is very clear. I feel that gender dysphoria is indeed a mental illness.
I agree.
And that, it is not reality to suggest that a man can become a woman or a woman can become a man, or that gender is entirely disconnected from sex and is thus utterly fluid. I think that's nonsense. As far as as far as what's happening in the United States, you're seeing that movement. I mean, there's the New York City Council tried to put a regulation on the books that would fine people if you went into a restaurant and they didn't use your preferred gender pronoun, that they would try and fine you, which seems like a basic violation of the First Amendment. I do think that things are going to get pretty bad in the United States pretty quickly around these issues, because there's an attempt to particularly quash religious speech. There's an attempt to say that if you are like the Boy Scouts in California, the state of California threatened to remove their nonprofit status unless they allowed gay Scoutmasters. Now, whatever you think about gay Scoutmasters, that has nothing to do with the nonprofit status of the Boy Scouts. I mean, they are an organization that was originally founded as a religious organization. So, but that's the aggressors in this culture war are the left. They like to pretend that we are the aggressors if we say that men are men and women are women, but that has been the reality for all of human history and biological history. So I'm concerned that it's the left that is on the offense. I'm going to talk about microaggressions. I'm going to talk about safe spaces and trigger warnings and the entire culture of stupidity and snowflakery that has now arisen on college campuses, and why it's making a bunch of pathetic, mewling children out of what could be adults on the verge of doing decent things.
Well, I mean, Generation X, for example, is the most conservative generation since World War II, I believe, or the Great Depression or whatnot. And so, if you follow up with the little culture wars on YouTube and on different websites, it does seem like feminism and social justice warrior is being thoroughly debunked. While on university campuses, academia, it's not really, but it starts to segue into popular society. Do you feel like social justice warriors and feminism is getting less and less popular, or do you feel like it's just getting stronger and stronger? Like, at what point would you say we're winning, right?
I mean, listen,
I feel like we're winning. That's the thing.
I actually do think that we're winning, but I think that that's going to have to be a battle that moves beyond just shouting social justice warrior people, and it's going to have to actually identify what the legislative threats are that the left is going to attempt to pursue. So there's two battles that are happening. One is the popular culture battle. That one I think we're winning. I think people acknowledge that it is ridiculous to start burning down universities because you don't like what a speaker is going to say. So I think that that's a battle that we're winning. I think that we're winning the battle where, when it comes to the notion that it is anti-feminist to suggest that women make the same amount of money as men. Like these are battles I think that are very winnable and are being won in the culture war. I do think that there are legislative efforts that are underway that are more dangerous, and that is the more broad spectrum stuff. And there, I'm not sure we're winning. So to take an example on hate speech, the only way to defeat the hate speech argument is to say hate speech should never be legislated, and you don't have an excuse for shutting down somebody else's speech. But because there is a reactionary tendency for some on my side of the aisle, some people on the right, there's a tendency to say, well, if they call it hate speech when we do it to them, then we should call it hate speech when they do it to us. Well, no, then you're granting their premise that hate speech is something that ought to be stamped out, or and I don't see any purpose to that, especially when we're winning the culture war.
You don't win the battle of ideas by adopting the wrong ideas of the other side.
Right. I mean, even if you're going to adopt the tactic, you have to do so clearly ironically. You have to do so as an attempt to show, like, okay, what you're doing is so stupid, I'll do it to you, and then you'll see how stupid it is. But that's not exactly what's happening. The perfect example is this attempt by some people to storm the Julius Caesar performance in New York. And I know that I'm getting you in trouble with your own network here a little bit. My perspective on this is that if it's snowflakery when somebody tries to stop my speeches, it is snowflakery when you try to shut down Julius Caesar. If you want to say that you're shutting down Julius Caesar because you're trying to show the left some of its own medicine and how it feels when their events are shut down, then that would be one thing, but that's not actually what you're saying. You're just saying you don't like what they're doing, you think it's bad, and therefore you're shutting it down. That's exactly the same thing.
Last question. Since you're here in Canada, beautiful Canada, what's your thought on our leader, Justin Trudeau? I heard you say you kind of hate him. I heard you say you love Stephen Harper.
Right,
I agree with that, but could you elaborate why you hate Justin Trudeau?
All I have to say about Justin Trudeau is he's handsome Bernie Sanders. And that's
You gotta give me more than that, man. Wait. At least Bernie Sanders is he honest? I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, now his wife's under FBI investigation, so I can't go with he's super honest. But Justin Trudeau appears to have the IQ of a kumquat. I mean, he seems like a very, very stupid man.
He was if you don't know, he was a snowboarding instructor. He's a teacher. If you don't know.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty qualified, huh?
I mean,
You're more qualified to be our prime minister, and you're American.
well, I mean, when we annex you, then things will change.
All right.
When the great Trumpian annexation comes.
All right. Thank you very much for talking to me. Appreciate it. Ben Shapiro. Science. Like and subscribe to the Rebel.media.